Hi guys, Elsewhere here. I know that this camera angle is atrocious for me, but we are actually not talking about me right this minute. I did a shoot just a moment ago about what I was wearing, some of what I was wearing, and just how my day was going, and I focused on another part of my studio. So if you're back for part two, welcome back. And here I am on wall number 2 in the studio. And if you watch the other video, you can see, you know what? I think I'll just change it up a little bit just by taking off the scarf. One of the things I actually wanted to demonstrate was I might as well do it because this back wall is a wardrobe wall. This scarf is just, it's tan on one end and cream gold on the other. And so I just tied the corners and made this infinity scarf that just drapes over, and it has this really natural, soft flow from kind of warm tones into cool tones and all different shades. And it just complements any warm tone or cool tone outfit. It's just that offset piece with the warm and cool, and it really balances stuff out. And then this one, the reason I wanted to show you both is because this one is the same thing. These are just rectangle scarves, but the pattern is like this batik, and it's the same thing. So you have a completely different pattern. It's the same feel. It's very soft. It's a rectangle. It's tied on a bias, turned into an infinity here. And you can see how different it is, but it has all the same colors and it's the exact same accessory, and I could pick it up just as easy. They're totally interchangeable. So I'm gonna say that's my segment on what I'm wearing and accessories, just to, stay on, because I'm supposed to do it every time, whatever that means. Consistent. I'm trying to be consistent. So I recently just decided, I've had this studio for 2 years. On this wall, I think I'll explain a little more. In the first part, I kind of showed a little bit about the work that I've done since I decided to turn this into my filming studio. But this wall, I'll talk a little more about the space itself and how it became my studio. And then I'll also talk to you about what this wall is all about. So 2 years ago, I was actually living directly across the driveway in a little studio. I'm gonna bring this down now since I'm actually talking to you guys directly. And it might as well look good, right? And it's just a little studio with a separate bathroom, but the cooking area and the living area and the sleeping area were all just kind of combined into one space. And it's fine for me as a single person who lives alone. But it just, like, there wasn't room for my bed and a proper chair for somebody to sit in if company was coming. My mom was coming to visit. I didn't have a decent place to offer her to sit and be comfortable. And the people that had been renting this space had decided they were going to give it up. So I called my landlord immediately. Both spaces are his. This is on his property. And so I asked him about it, and he told me how much it was. And I said, okay, well, can I rent that space? And he said, sure. And so when I rented this, the previous tenant had bought insulation and was planning on, this was an uninsulated space, but it's in a very well-built outdoor structure, or not outdoor, but detached building. And so they had already had the insulation delivered, and it was in this space, but it hadn't been installed, and they hadn't done anything about finishing like sheetrock or what have you, drywall, whatever you call it. So I asked if I could purchase the insulation and go ahead with the project, and they said yes. So I had the insulation, I had to buy the Visqueen and the staple guns and the tools I needed, but I spent, it was in 2020, but it was the fall before the big March event in 2020. And so I had worked all fall and through the winter to get the insulation installed. And it took me a really long time. I didn't know what I was doing. I had to buy a Tyvek suit. I had to have all the equipment. And I knew that for somebody who knew what they were doing, it would have been done in a very short amount of time. But it's not complicated. It's one of those things, it's one of those moments in life where, because I decided that I would just take the time and do it myself, I know how to basically do that process now. And I can do it if I need to. And if it's asked of me, I at least have some comprehension of what the job is and can make an educated decision about whether I want to do that job or not. So at the very least, it gave me that, and that was part of my decision to just do it myself. And the other part of it was just nobody wanted to do it. I was paying, I had money. I didn't care how long it took. I was taking people's bids. I couldn't get it. Just nobody showed up. And so that was also obviously a driving force, but in the end, I'm glad that happened. I'm gonna turn on a side lamp here. The reason that's important isn't necessarily because I want you to know how much of the groundwork I had to put in, but this was just studs, and so I did all the insulating, the plumbing, the electrical. The electrical and the plumbing was installed in the building, so I just had to do the interior for this specific space. But I learned a lot just during that process, and I had really good professionals that they would kind of take a minute just to explain the actual practicality about what they were doing, not necessarily going into, you know, the techniques or trying to explain to me what they're doing and why they're doing it, but just, you know, I watched the tools they used, I watched the materials they bought, I watched the order that they put things together and how they completed the job. And so now I at least have that fundamental understanding. And is it a job I would do for myself? Maybe. Is it something I would do if somebody else asked me to do it? Depends. Depends on whether I feel confident. But anyway, it was all really good for me. And then come spring, couldn't find an insulator, couldn't find sheetrock. I had all the insulation in, wiring's done, plumbing's done. I had a loft installed, which will be another segment. That was done. I couldn't find anybody to drywall or finish the walls for me so that I could paint. So it was just pink insulation. Totally useless other than it was warm now, but it was just pink insulation covered in clear plastic. So I was talking to a friend of mine, my pastor, and he knows me pretty good. He knows that when I'm talking to him about projects like this. He's, you know, he knows my skill set. He knows what's realistic for me to do for myself, as opposed to if I really actually need somebody else to do something for me. And he encouraged me to use OSB, and that suggestion had been made previously, and I let people who knew more about carpentry than me. I valued their opinion on the usage of such a high toxicity and just dirty. It's just very, it's dusty and dirty, and it's as much adhesive as it is wood. I mean, it's just not fun to work with, and it's for interior, you know, it's like for subflooring or something, which we're standing on it right now. But I measured out the materials. I knew how much I needed. He helped me order and get the OSB delivered, and I actually cut and installed all of the OSB, including the ceiling. I did get a carpenter to come in and install nailers for me. If you guys don't know what that is, it's kind of a framing structure underneath the finishing wall, so you have something to actually nail or screw to when you go to put up your drywall or your OSB or whatever you're doing. Those have to be there. Fortunately, that is an extremely easy but highly detailed job that carpenters do, and so I was lucky that because of that combination, I was able to get a carpenter and to measure and cut and install the materials I needed for that. And then one of the things I did with the OSB, that was a real journey. It's very heavy. I brought in a crank and a lift. I had a hoist. I had to do the ceiling and the walls, and it was a process. It took me just part-time, like working on it after work, and just installing sometimes 1 or 2 pieces a day. It took me about 3 months, but I got it done. I had to get it done while the weather was nice and dry outside, because you can't store OSB outside. It's like cardboard. It will just soak up moisture. It's strictly an interior material. So anyway, I went ahead with that process, and as I was planning this out, the one thing I knew was going to be really great about it was going to have this really textured finish, and I wasn't going to have to worry about doing like the orange peel thing. And then the wrong side of these boards has a very rough mesh, almost like screen door kind of a finish to it, and so you actually have a really uniform print, I'll say, on top of this really rough texture. And so and then I chose a really dark purple. I actually didn't choose it, I made it myself. This is a custom color, but I did it in eggshell. I got the cheapest paint I could possibly afford, but I did ask for the eggshell finish, and eggshell finish will always run you $1 or $2 more. But what it is it's almost like a matte satin, highly durable, washable finish. And so if you use the eggshell, you don't necessarily have to go with a high gloss in places like around a sink or behind a stove where you need to be able to wipe off. And not only that, it has this really soft matte finish, so it's kind of like it's more reflective than your primer. Like Kills is, like, when you think of the color white, like primer white is, there's absolutely no pigment whatsoever of any kind, and the eggshell would give you that same finish as far as glare and reflection. It stays very uniform. And so I have it on these textured walls, and what it did is it made it appear to be kind of this really deep purple crushed velvet. I love it. It turned out great. It's the floor, the ceiling, everything, wall to wall, ceiling, floor, absolutely everything is painted this purple. I mixed an indigo blue with a fuchsia pink, and what I really wanted was, I actually kind of have an example. I wanted it to be more, see there's some green in this too, but you can almost see the iridescence of the purple and the pink. But you can very specifically, it doesn't make this cup purple or pink, it's a reflection, that iridescent. So I was trying to capture, and I knew by mixing the colors I was going to end up, it's a red and a blue, you're going to end up with a purple. So anyway, the finished product has a bunch of other, like a little bit of red and a little bit of black, and like they did this whole thing, and this has a formula now. So, and based on that, let's see where we're at. We're at 16 minutes. I'm going to show you what I need to work on now. I had placed these rungs up here. I showed you at the beginning of the video here. We're going to go back to this for a minute. Horrible camera angle for me, but I'm just going to share this with you guys. So this is my closet, and I prefer that my things face front. I'm looking at the front of all my garments, and then they're like levered behind one another or in front of one another, however you look at it. But I can see what I do, like with my tops, I space from the center of the garment to one side will get covered. So not only can I see half the garment, but if it's a button down, I can see what the buttons look like. If it's a collar, I can see at least half of what the collar is doing, so I know, or if it doesn't have a collar and such. Anyway, so because I like my clothes hung this way, of course they hang against the wall, and they only have the clearance of the rung. So now my curtain rung, my clothing rung, instead of being the width of a hanger in a closet, is now approximately 4 inches. It's just the width of the curtain brackets, the hardware. They only hang about 3 inches off the wall. I highly suggest this just because it takes up a lot less room. You do stay very organized. You can see everything, and you can just like go bam, 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 and pick your 3 things. You know, you got your shirt, your pants, and your jacket or whatever. Anyway, the issue is the texture of my beautiful purple walls that I so lovingly spent 3 months installing and learning how to measure and cut, and using a pencil and a skill saw and a tape measure, and having to lift these panels and put them in here, and so much going on. And now I've decided, in this beautiful color, and now I've decided I want to do this. Well, you can see above the very top rung, and here behind me, up, and this here, let's see where I'm reaching. These are sheer curtain panels, and I had to hang those on the rod but behind the garment because my clothes were actually sticking like Velcro to this rough OSB finish. It's very rough, it's textured. It would be like having popcorn ceiling in a way. It's just really rough. It's, you know. So I put these here so my clothes are protected, and that's great. But the white panels cover up the almost the entire wall, and it's just In the previous video, you saw I talked about my color and the things I need in my life, and there's no way that I'm covering up my custom purple paint that I not only did I create, but I came in here and painted every square inch of this place. It took probably a week to cover it up with these white panels. So, cut to. So I made all this progress. I had mounted all those rungs. I had brought over all these clothes. I have these storyboard. That's my storyboard. That's where I put together my outfits that I'm bringing to you guys. I have 2 outfits picked out and ready to go for some future videos that'll just maybe be about fashion. This is more the studio introduction. So, oh, there it is. I'll be right back. I knew it was right here. My eye wouldn't settle on this. So, I thought I had pulled a single piece of this out, but I don't think I did. So, for Mother's Day, my son calls and he says, Mom, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I really just want to go to Value Village. Can we go just chill? I don't want to sit down and eat, try and sit down and eat somewhere on Mother's Day. Forget it. Restaurants are not happening. I don't care whether it's COVID or not. Those places are packed. If you don't plan, just don't, not worth it. Just do something fun. Go to the park. Go thrifting like we did. Do, you know. Anyway, that's just my opinion. So, and he likes to thrift, and so it was great for all of us. And so he picked me up and we went, and I knew the one thing I wanted that I knew I could get secondhand fairly easily. I needed a blackout curtain for this behind the quilt wall, which was the previous video. This is really driving me crazy. I'm gonna just try and tuck that in right there. There's a window there and I needed a blackout curtain, so that was my #1 goal. And then I knew that I had this slippery situation behind me. And so my thought originally was to try and find a sheer curtain in either, what I thought I was gonna do was order the curtains that are up there now, but in a deep purple, and they're sheer. So my color would still come through, and I was hoping I could at least just get it to hide. But I found the blackout curtain, so I got that quilt hung. And then, for some reason, somebody decided that they needed, I don't know, there's got to be 30 yards of this 48-inch fabric for something, and then they didn't need it anymore. And so I got these panels for like $2.50 a piece, and they are iridescent, holographic, jewel tone, floral print, sheer, and they have these, like, if I hold it up here, the part that disappears is actually I'll just hold it. Hopefully you guys can tell, maybe down by the floor. But the part that disappears, it disappears because they're purple flowers. And so I am going to hang this up on the wall. I'm going to tack it right up at the ceiling. I have to take down my rungs. I have to take down all my clothing. And I'm going to hang this down my wall. And I just, you know, when you think things are kind of going backwards, or you work really hard to get something done, and then you realize there's, you know, a challenge you didn't know was there, and a problem you're going to have to remedy. You know, it can kind of be a bummer. It kind of, you know, it can take the momentum, you know, and it did. I mean, I knew I had a solution with the white drapes for the time being so that I wouldn't have to pull everything down and store it. again while I figured out how to fix that. But if I hadn't gone looking for that blackout curtain for the quilt, you know, if I didn't need something for this wall because of the problem I'm having, I would have had absolutely no excuse whatsoever to bring home this rainbow, beautiful, absolutely everything, cheap. I'm sure, my guess is they were an overlay for like banquet tables for some event. Anyway, problem solved, and that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to sharing with you guys now that I've talked about the wall and the purple and the color. And so, yeah, that's part 2 for the studio and where I'm at right now. And like I said in the previous video, these spaces will kind of be transitioning as I'm figuring out, like, I have all of my accessories on my grandma's bureau right now, which is okay. And I told a little story about how grandma used to keep her accessories there as well. But that's actually going to be my hair and makeup station. And so I have a wall that will eventually become my accessories wall. And that's my next project. So now that I have the quilt up, now that I've made arrangements for my storyboard and my fashion section, as you can see, I've brought my collection, and I'll talk about my shoes. I don't really have that many, but what they're staged on is furniture that's meant for another part of the studio. And these shoes, what I'm really hoping is that they'll end up being part of the accessory wall. I just haven't quite figured out how to do that yet. So anyway, I'm at a half hour. Not too bad. Thanks for tuning in, you guys, and I'm so happy to be here, and I can't wait to just, I mean, everywhere I look, there's these little programs that I want to do for you guys, just little segments on either a life hack or, I mean, like I found this really cool lighting situation. I want to share that with you guys because I'm using it right now, and I can't believe I didn't think of it sooner. It's so practical and I love it so much. And yeah, maybe I'll share a little bit about lighting and some of the challenges with that in the next video. So anyway, you know, thanks for coming along to my studio. Elsewhere out.